Right now, federal judges are under the worst shadow of physical threat in my lifetime and perhaps in the history of this country.
This Senate hearing explodes as Sheldon Whitehouse confronts Trump's judicial picks.
If you can't even sit here and say that Joe Biden won that election or that the Capitol was attacked, what's left? What's left if a hard case comes your way as a judge, and let's say the Trump administration is bearing down on that? Why would we ever believe that you would give the litigants a fair hearing and a fair decision if the executive branch was leaning in on you when we can't get a reasonable answer out of any of you with the executive branch leaning in on you to give these ridiculous answers today? I'm really sorry to have to go through this and that you have to go through this. But it would be nice if you could tell your executive branch handlers, for instance, Ms. Clark, I'm supported by Lindsey Graham. He's a friend of President Trump. He's the second senior person on the Republican side in the Judiciary Committee. He's likely to be the next Judiciary Committee chair. I think I'll be okay. I don't need to make myself ridiculous at your direction. It'd be great if you could have said that. It would be great if your answers were simple and honest here today. It's really disappointing. Let me ask a different question, a legal question. A judge, you want to be judges. A judge gets a threat to the judge's life or to the judge's family. Can you imagine a scenario in which liability may attach to individuals beyond the utterer of that threat? Ms. Clark?
Senator, as a prosecutor, there are instances where there's some responsibility that is assigned to someone who is not the utterer of a threat to an individual. And so to answer your question, yes, I can imagine.
Do you agree?
Yes, Senator, and if confirmed to the bench, I would follow all Supreme Court precedent and Ninth Circuit precedent.
Mr. Rick, you agree?
Yes, Senator, I would agree with that.
I don't know that I care what you think, Ms. Westerkamp, because you're going to international trade and you're probably not going to see much of this, but do you agree?
Yes, Senator.
Yeah, and those doctrines that would provide the legal basis for investigation in those scenarios would include doctrines like, name one, Ms. Clark.
Senator, doctrines that are, if someone is essentially carrying out
solicitation, would that be one? Solicitation of a threat?
Yes.
Or a conspiracy out of which the threat emerged, would that be another one?
Yes.
Yes. How about, and it's the product of an enterprise under the racketeering statutes. Would that also be another way that liability could extend beyond the utterer?
That is correct, Senator.
Can you think of any others, Ms. Lane, where liability extends beyond the utterer of the threat? What are some of the legal theories that would support that kind of investigation and prosecution?
Senator, the doctrines you mentioned, I would agree with, and I would just look always to the federal law and federal statutes guiding that.
Mr. Rickey?
Senator, I would agree with that. I think you covered the major ones, conspiracy, RICO. There may be other avenues of potential legal liability, but I think you covered the three big ones in that scenario.
Ms. Westerkamp, you agree?
Senator, I'm not aware if there are any more with my practice before the Court of International Trade and Court of Federal Claims that doesn't touch on criminal law.
So here's why I asked you these questions. I asked you these questions because right now federal judges are under the worst shadow of physical threat in my lifetime and perhaps in the history of this country. And in responding to those threats, we have the United States Marshal Service, which reports to the Department of Justice. And I have now over a dozen times asked the Marshal Service, will you investigate behind the utterer of a threat if the evidence justifies it? That's a super easy question. The answer is, yeah, of course we will. They won't answer that. They won't answer that. And I point this out because judges across the country need to pay attention to the fact that the Marshal Service won't confirm that it will investigate behind the utterer of a threat if the evidence supports that. And why would that be the case? That would be the case because when you get behind the utterer of a lot of these threats, you run into right-wing conspiracies. And this MAGA Department of Justice would rather not go there. And so they leave judges exposed with investigations in which they aren't doing investigative 101 work that you've all identified as plausible legal theories. And we need to fix that. We need to fix that.
Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, alongside Senator Richard Blumenthal, is confronting a group of judicial nominees over what appears to be carefully rehearsed, evasive answers. The frustration in the room builds around a simple but serious concern. If a nominee cannot clearly acknowledge established facts, such as the outcome of a certified presidential election or the reality of the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol, then what does that say about their ability to serve as an independent judge in future high-stakes constitutional cases? At the core of Whitehouse's critique is the idea of judicial integrity. Judges are expected to interpret the law based on evidence, precedent, and constitutional principles, not political loyalty or pressure from any administration. When nominees respond with vague or non-committal answers on basic historical facts, it raises a larger concern: whether those same individuals would be able to resist pressure in real courtroom scenarios where powerful political actors are involved. Whitehouse pushes the issue further by raising a hypothetical but very real legal concern. Judges, once confirmed, may face cases where the executive branch or politically influential figures are indirectly involved. In such situations, independence is not optional, it is essential. If a nominee appears hesitant to affirm basic truths under questioning in a public hearing, it raises the question of how they would respond when facing private pressure behind closed doors in actual judicial decision-making. This is where the discussion shifts from political theater into something much more consequential: the safety and integrity of the judiciary itself.